Let me tell you something that you already know. This church, Southside, we are for this city. Over the last several years, God has been reminding us over and over again that we are here for this city. God looked at this city, our city, a city in desperate need of hope and help today, tomorrow, and for generations to come, and He had an idea. And that idea is us. That idea is Southside Church. You know what? It's time that Southside put our foot down in this city and said, we're here today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. We are here and we are for this city. We're for hope. We're for help. We're for more. More has a name, and that name is Jesus. Because of Him, the best is yet to come.
Good morning, everybody. Let me start out today by telling you something that you already know. Time flies. So Corinne and I are in Calgary this weekend for our 24-year-old son, Lucas's last home games as a university basketball player at the University of Calgary, which is amazing because time flies. Almost as far as I look back, I remember Lucas playing basketball almost from the time that he could walk. And I have a lot of memories from those days, and some of them are about wins and losses, but most of them are just about being with Lucas. Sometimes him and I would drive, just the two of us, to and from a game. Sometimes it would be Corinne and me and Lucas, and sometimes our whole family would gather up. But time really flies. And so if you're a parent here today, make today your masterpiece. You know why? Because time flies. Embrace it. Be grateful for every minute. So we're in this series called More. I told you last week that in June of 2006, I led my first mission trip as a youth pastor of Southside Church. We went down to Vicente Guerrero. We drove from Chilliwack to Vicente Guerrero with a group of about 45 youth and youth leaders. It was amazing, like an incredible trip, crazy trip. And there's kind of two things that I really remember from the trip. One was just what it felt like to build 4 homes when we were down there and to hand the keys over to these 4 families and just realize that a little bit of sacrifice by us, a little bit of effort by us was able to bless these amazing people. That was incredible. And the other thing I remember about that trip was the fires that we had every night. So at the end of the day, we would all gather together around a fire and come together as a team. We'd sing some songs, tell some stories, and someone would usually preach, like do a devotion or a short sermon. And the one that I remember the best was the sermon that was preached the very last night we were there. There was a guy who preached on a passage, 2 Corinthians 6. Let me read it for you today. It says this: "Companions, as we are in this work with you, we beg you, please don't squander one bit of this marvelous life God has given us. God reminds us, I heard your call in the nick of time. The day you needed me, I was there to help. Well, now is the right time to listen, the day to be helped. Don't put it off. Don't frustrate God's work by showing up late, throwing a question mark over everything we're doing. Our work as God's servants gets validated or not in the details. People are watching us as we stay at our post, alertly, unswervingly. In hard times, tough times, bad times, when we're beaten up, jailed, and mobbed, working hard, working late, working without eating, with pure heart, clear head, steady hand. In gentleness, holiness, and honest love, when we're telling the truth and when God's showing His power, when we're doing our best setting things right, when we're praised and when we're blamed, slandered and honored, true to our word though distrusted, ignored by the world but recognized by God, terrifically alive though rumored to be dead, beaten within an inch of our lives but refusing to die, immersed in tears yet always filled with deep joy, living on handouts yet enriching many, having nothing, having it all." Dear Corinthians, I can't tell you how much I long for you to enter into this wide, open, spacious life. We didn't fence you in. The smallness you feel comes from within you. Your lives aren't small, but you're living them in a small way. I'm speaking as plainly as I can and with great affection. Open up your lives, live openly and expansively. It's funny, it made perfect sense to me around a campfire in Vicente Guerrero, Mexico in June of 2006, and it still makes sense to me today, that a mission is not a trip. A mission is a life. There's a reason for you. There's a purpose for us. And it is definitely not to settle for small. To live this wide open, expansive life. It's interesting because it was the Apostle Paul who wrote that passage. He was inspired by God to write a letter to a church that he had planted in Corinth in about 57 AD. And that letter, according to God's plan, showed up in our Bible. Well, 5 years later, Paul wrote another letter to a church that he had planted in Ephesus, and that letter too showed up in our Bible as the book of Ephesians. And what's amazing is if you look at Ephesians 3, verses 20 and 21, it's like Paul summarizes this whole long passage into just a short statement. He says this in Ephesians 3, God can do anything, you know, far more than you can imagine or guess or request at your wildest dreams. He does it not by pushing us around, but by working within us, his Spirit deeply and gently within us. Man, I think of that 2 Corinthians 6 passage all the time, and I think of that Ephesians 3 passage all the time. Like when my vision is starting to blur or when I'm feeling kind of tired, I go back to that, and what made sense to me in Vicente Guerrero in June of 2006 still makes sense to me today. That a mission isn't a trip, it's a life. And that rather than settle for small, we're born, we're called, we were created to move towards more. God can do anything, you know, far more than you could ever imagine. See, that Ephesians 3 passage is one that's going to kind of serve as the centerpiece of this series. In fact, you're going to be hearing it a lot over the next 2 years. But it's to 2 Corinthians 6 that I want to turn for instructions on how we as a group can refuse to settle for small and instead move towards more. Because I feel like the 2 Corinthians 6 passage kind of goes line by line and instructs us exactly how we can do it. And so you might remember that last week, we talked about the fact that if we want to move towards more instead of settling for small, number one, we got to do it together. Let me put it this way, that God looked at this city, Chilliwack, and he saw that this is a city in desperate need of hope and help. And he had an idea, and that idea was you, but not just you. And his idea was me, but not just me. It's us. And so if we're going to move towards more instead of settling for small, we actually need to do it together, not alone. And the second thing we talked about last week is that you actually have to make the decision. I actually have to make the decision to move towards more. If you're a Christian here today, the good news is your eternity is secure. That's amazing news. But according to 2 Corinthians 6 and passages throughout the Bible, you could still squander your life. You could still settle for small. So you got to make a decision. And what does that mean? Well, it means that as a church, we've decided that we're going to move towards more. That we're not going to rely on just knowledge. We're going to put our knowledge into practice through faith. And instead of being fearful, we're going to be fearless. And instead of fighting against this city, we're going to fight for this city. So it's about faith and fearlessness and for this city. So I want to continue on out of 2 Corinthians 6 today. Paul says this, well, now is the right time to listen, the day to be helped. Don't put it off. Don't frustrate God's work by showing up late, throwing a question mark over everything we're doing. Our work as God's servants gets validated or not in the details. People are watching us as we stay at our post, alertly, unswervingly. We stay at our post, alertly and unswervingly. That's consistent. That's faithful. And when I think about staying at our post alertly and unswervingly, when I think about consistency and when I think about faithfulness, I think of the same thing that you think of. I immediately think of Mr. Rogers. You say, who? I'm telling you, I think of Mr. Rogers. Do you know that for 33 years, Fred Rogers had a run with a children's show called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood from 1968 to 2001. 33 years. For 33 years, every show started the same way. He put on his sneakers and his sweater, and he talked about the fact, he sang about the fact that it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And for 33 years, every show ended the same way. He sang a question, won't you be my neighbor? 33 years. 33 years of sneakers and sweaters. You say, that's pretty boring. Yeah, it might be. 33 years of it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. You say, that's pretty redundant. Yeah, you could be right. But you know what else it is? It's consistent. It's faithful. And actually, it's pretty incredible. Fred Rogers, for 33 years, stayed at his post, alertly and unswervingly. And I want you to think about that for a second, because for 33 years, millions and millions of little kids watched this show, spanning the generations. And for some of those millions and millions of kids, they had a really consistent life. They had a faithful life. They had a functional life. There were so many things that they could count on. They could count on love. They could count on support. They could count on everything that they needed. But you know what the truth is? There were also people out of those millions of kids who watched that show throughout the generations that had nothing consistent in their life. Nothing they could count on in their life except for one thing. Every day, Mr. Rogers was going to show up, and he was going to talk about the fact that it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. For 33 years, Fred Rogers, who was a Presbyterian pastor, by the way, stayed at his post, alertly, unswervingly. And for 33 years, he talked about wins and losses, behavior and believing, faith and fear. He stayed at his post, and over the course of the show, the show itself and Fred Rogers also received countless awards. In fact, Mr. Rogers got the Presidential Medal of Honor. And you know what's super interesting about that to me? He didn't get that award for the spectacular nature of any one episode of the show. He got the award for 33 years of spectacular faithfulness. Spectacular faithfulness. And that's really what I want to talk about today. It got me thinking about you and me. Like a bunch of years ago, we started to notice something. There's something unique about our church. I made a joke about it a little bit last week. I said, we're not the kind of church that looks at people and says, man, if you could just learn to dot your I's and cross your T's, maybe you could come hang out with us. We're not the kind of church that says, man, if you were just a little bit more well-behaved, if you were just a better person, maybe God would love you the way he loves us. That's never been us. It's not in our DNA. We're the church that says, Jesus saved me. And I know that he can do the same for you. In fact, we've gone as far as to say this, that no matter who you are or where you've been or what you've done, God loves you right now, and God has a plan for your past, your present, your future, and your eternity right now. And for years, we've watched people walk through those doors. Miracles. Every person who walks through the door is a miracle, and more of them. And then we've seen people take their next step, and that's a miracle. And so for some people, they've taken their first step. Say, I want to commit my life to Jesus. I want to be saved, and that's awesome. But you know what else we've seen over and over and over again? We've seen people take their 400th step. I just picked that number, but think about it. Here's what I think your 400th step might be. When you're a Christian, maybe you've grown up in the church, maybe you've known Jesus your whole life, and you come to a point in your life and you say this, you know what? A mission's not a trip. A mission's a life. And so I can't settle for small. I got to move towards more. And that's in the DNA of our church. And so years ago, we started looking around going, what are we here for? What are we here for? What are we here for? And it hit us. We're here for the city. We're here for this city. We're here to bring hope to the city. We're here to bring help to the city. I know I talked to you a little bit about that last week, that we want to bring more help, and we want to bring more hope in these next 2 years. And to do that today, tomorrow, and for generations to come, we need a home. We need a home. It's funny, I heard somebody say the other day, if you want to cast vision, if you want to make a change, if you want to grow, there's a formula. And here's what you got to do. You got to say, this is where we are right now. And this is why we can't stay here for one more second. And this is where we want to go. And this is why we got to get there as fast as possible. And someone told me that. And he said, you know what, Mike, when you talk to Southsiders, tell them that. This is where we are right now. This is why we can't stay here. And this is where we got to go. And this is why we got to get there. I said, have you met a lot of Southsiders? Oh, no, not really, but it really works. I'm like, I get 10 seconds into that with a Southside, and they're like, cool, Mike, can we just build the building already? That's in our DNA. We don't settle for small. We move towards more. It's just who we are. So you know what I'm not going to do today? I'm not going to stand up here and make arguments or try to convince you of anything. What I would like to do, though, is I'd like to dream a dream with you. I'd like to dream a dream of spectacular faithfulness. I'd like to dream a dream of a bunch of ordinary world changers who stay at their post, alertly and unswervingly, today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. Because here's what I think. I think if we can dream that dream together, all of us, that miracles are going to happen. You know my goal. My goal is that every single person who calls Southside Church their home would jump in and be a part of this 2-year expanded vision. Our average attendance this year on Sundays has been about 1,200 people per Sunday. But if you think about the fact that not everybody comes to church every Sunday in our culture, I would say there's probably 2,500 people in Chilliwack who call Southside Church their home. You know what my dream is? My dream is that if we can share this dream of spectacular faithfulness, that every single one of the 2,500 people that call Southside Church their home would jump in. Would say, hey, I can't do everything, but I can do something. And if we all do something, I'm convinced that God will keep showing up and remind us that he can do anything. He already has. We've seen it. A secondary goal is we need $6 million to pull off this expanded vision over the next 2 years. If we all just jump in and do what we can do, I guarantee you it's going to happen. But I want to dream a dream with you today. I want to dream a dream of spectacular faithfulness. I want to dream a dream of a bunch of ordinary world changers who stay at their post, alertly and unswervingly, today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. Because I think if that happens, we're going to see 3 things. Number 1, we're going to build a home away from home. We're going to build a home away from home. Man, one of my favorite stories that Jesus ever told is known as the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's amazing. There's this guy, and he's traveling down the broken road from Jerusalem to Jericho. And he gets jumped by a group of bandits. And they beat him up and take all his stuff, and they leave him naked and half dead on the side of the broken road from Jerusalem to Jericho. So he's lying there like naked and half dead. And Jesus says 2 religious men walk by, but they don't stop to help him. It doesn't really say why, but I'm wondering maybe it was because they looked at him and said, man, if you would have dotted your I's and crossed your T's, you wouldn't be naked and half dead. Or maybe they looked at him and said, hey, just as soon as you save yourself, you're welcome to come join me at my church. I'm not sure, but Jesus made the point that it's not enough. And so then a Samaritan walked by. And he saw this man on the broken road from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he saved his life. Like he bandaged his wounds and he attended to his hurts. He saved his life. And then he brought him to an inn. And at the inn, his healing was continued. And he had the chance to become stronger and to make the most of this second chance that he had of life. What an incredible story. So the broken road from Jerusalem to Jericho, by the way, that represents life. Because life is hard, right? Sometimes it's easy. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's all up, and sometimes it's down, but that's life. And sometimes life hurts. And sometimes it feels like life can leave us naked and half dead on the side of the road. You know, sometimes in the course of our lives, we run into people like those bandits who they wish us ill and they hurt us. And sometimes we run into people like the religious guys who could help us, but they don't. So who's this traveler, naked and half dead on the side of the road? Well, he represents me. He represents you. If you're a Christian here today, I'll bet you remember a time that, spiritually speaking, you were naked and half dead on the side of this broken road called life. The Samaritan? Well, that's Jesus. Jesus saved your life. And he saved my life too. See, the Bible says that when Jesus stepped into human history, he came on a rescue mission. Specifically, the Bible says that Jesus came to seek and save the lost. It's amazing because to this day, Jesus still walks that broken road from Jerusalem to Jericho, saving people's lives. Oh, the inn. That's us. We showed up twice. Once we were naked and half dead, but now we are saved. And so we become the inn, a home away from home. See, if you're a Christian here today, your home is heaven. This world and all its brokenness is not your home, but you know what the church is? The church is an inn. The church is a home away from home where someone who's been saved by Jesus can make the most out of their second chance of life. They've been blessed, and so they become a blessing to this world, right? Like healed people heal people. Helped people help people. That people who have been filled with hope bring hope to others. I dream a dream of spectacular faithfulness. I dream a dream of a bunch of ordinary world changers who stay at their post alertly, unswervingly, today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. And when I dream that dream, I think that we are a home away from home. Let me show you what I mean.
Hi, I'm Josh Esmeyer.
I'm his wife, Megan Esmeyer.
We got married in 2010, and we have 3 boys.
Jackson is 6, Lincoln is 5, and Hayden is almost 2. Our son Lincoln was born with some health issues. Just after his 3rd birthday, he was diagnosed with severe autism and a rare genetic syndrome called Meyer syndrome. Attending church with Lincoln was never typical.
Lincoln is nonverbal. Even though he is 5, his mental capacity is closer to about a year and a half. And because of that, he really struggles in situations like church where there's large gatherings of people.
As Lincoln got older and his autism became more prominent, we found it really difficult to go to churches because a lot of churches didn't have the resources to have trained volunteers that could give him the attention and the one-on-one that he needed. One day in a conversation with a girlfriend, she casually mentioned that Southside actually had a Sunday school called the Team Room, which was specifically for families with kids with special needs. Once I heard that Southside had a Sunday school that I could take Lincoln to, I put my Mama Bear hat on and I found the phone number for Southside Church and I made a call. And I laid out the needs that we had, and the lovely voice on the other side of the phone was so accommodating and just made us really feel like it was a place to be, and that was it. That was, I think, a Thursday, and that Sunday, it was in July, and we woke our kids up, packed up, got ready for church, and drove to Southside. And we walked in and were greeted and given hope that we had found a family. And they were great with Lincoln. He loved it. He entered the room like he had been there before, which we know is not really easy for him to do. And Josh and I got to sit together in a service for the first time in probably what felt like years.
That first Sunday, we were super nervous. We were worried that Lincoln wouldn't want to attend class, and like every other time, we would just end up leaving halfway through service and have nothing to really do. As the service went on, we became more and more immersed in the service and realized this is a church we could call home.
And we just felt like we walked away feeling whole, and it wasn't just a one-time Band-Aid. It felt very normal for us to be there. Within a few months of attending Southside, both Josh and I found spots that we could serve and become involved with. And from then, it just snowballed into every Sunday, our whole family looks forward to going. And it's where we are now, a part of the Southside family.
Megan serves on the welcoming team as part of the patio crew, greeting and making coffee for people as they enter the church. I started serving on the worship team and quickly transitioned into the sound department. I recently joined staff here at Southside as Director of Audio.
For any families looking for a church, when we say here at Southside that we have a seat saved with your name on it, we mean it. Step out in faith, bring your whole family. It's a risk you should be willing to take.
That's us. We're a home away from home. Oh, by the way, not just one day a week. We want to be a home away from home every single day. Because heal people. And help people. And people who have been filled with hope spend their lives bringing hope to other people. I just want to dream a dream with you today. I want to dream a dream of spectacular faithfulness. I want to dream a dream of a bunch of ordinary world changers who stay at their post alertly, unswervingly, today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. And if we do that, we're going to be a home away from home. You know what else we're going to be? We're going to be a home base. We're going to build a building. And it's going to be a home base. Can I tell you one thing right up front? From the time that we move into our new building, within 2 years, we will double our weekend attendance. Lots of reasons for that. Can I give you one simple one? The auditorium that we're moving into has 1,000 seats. The Southside Kids area has room for more than 300 kids. So that's a one service attendance of 1,300 people. I want to talk, by the way, a little bit more about our kids' environments. I just think that our Southside Kids volunteers do an absolutely incredible job. They do something beautiful every week. But I like to dream a dream of what it could look like if we gave our Southside Kids team a home base, a place to call their own. You know what I mean? Like, just think about this. Think about all the hours that go in every single week. Set up, takedown, set up, takedown, set up, takedown, set up. Think of the things that we could create that would stay for more than a day. Think of the creative elements. Think of what Southside Kids could become. It's already great, but we could continue and maximize the tradition that we've seen in our church over the years, which is that kids come to Southside Kids, or teenagers come to Southside Youth, or young adults show up at our church, and they meet Jesus. And he saves their life. And then they go home and they bring their parents to church. It's happened over and over and over again, and we want to continue to do that. So we want to just maximize our kid space. I had an idea too, like, all the hours that we put into setup, takedown, setup, takedown, setup, takedown. I was just thinking last Christmas, you remember? We put up that 30-foot Christmas tree outside of the hangar. Could you imagine what kind of light? We could make a light show. The first Christmas we were there, that you could see it from the moon. Okay, so maybe you couldn't see it from the moon, but it would be unreal. Oh, the things that we could do. I just want to dream a dream of spectacular faithfulness, I think about our campus groups that meet every week, and I know that every square inch of the facility that has been planned with all of us in mind, including our campus groups that now exist and might exist in the future with room to grow. Like, think about this. I wonder what it would be like if we had our dedicated Southside Kids space. What it would be like if one night a week, young families could come and the parents could go to a campus group, and their kids could be checked into Southside Kids on a weeknight. Like, the flexibility is incredible. How many services could we add on the weekend? Where could we add services? I get this thought about Southside Youth too. You know the way we feel at Southside, that we're a family and we need every generation. So the thing that you can't do to Southside Youth kids, you can't say, you're the future of this church, because it's not true. You're the president of this church. We need you right now. But it's weird right now, right? Because they meet at the hangar on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but then we have church at a completely different place. And so what I dream of is, I dream of the day that we can open up the doors of our own facility, our home base, and say, hey, this is yours. This is your church. See you Sunday. Can I say one more thing? A little bit off topic. If you are in Southside Youth, and you're in somewhere between grade 6 and grade 12, we need you. Like, we have this 2-year expanded vision, right? And the goal is that everybody would get involved. And I believe there's tremendous spiritual power in that. And I get it. We don't all have the same capacity, but we all have the same ability to sacrifice. So grade 6 student, grade 7 student, grade 12 student, can I ask you, what are you going to commit on March 3rd? What are you going to give? Because I believe that if you give sacrificially, someone else might look and go, oh, that wasn't very much. But God doesn't see it that way. God sees your heart. And I believe that when we come together with the same heart, we can dream a dream. We can dream a big dream of a home base. I want to talk about the parking lot. I'm a big fan of the new planned parking lot. It's massive. It's twice the size of the parking lot at Sardis. You're like, Mike, who cares? Think about the road hockey games. Think about the basketball tournaments that we could have out there. But way more than that, actually, I've been a big proponent of the parking lot from the beginning, and let me tell you why. We just need more room. Okay, so we always say that it's not enough that Southside Church is a friendly church. We need to have friends at church, right? But it doesn't work if your parking lot is small and the service ends and we're like, thanks for coming, now get out. Run along. We don't have room. No, we need way more room. We've planned this facility, this home base. We plan it with tons of spots for people to connect and make friends at church. And so we planned a parking lot big enough that we can say, hang out, talk to somebody. Because I'm convinced that if we're going to move towards more and not settle for small, we got to do it together. We got to do it together. Just want to dream a dream, of spectacular faithfulness. I want to dream a dream of a bunch of ordinary world changers who stay at their post, alertly, unswervingly, today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. Because if we do, we're going to see a home away from home, a home base, and finally, a home stand. Did I mention earlier that time flies? Time flies, When Lucas was in his first year of college, I went to watch him play basketball in Alberta. So I flew there, and I remember flying back home, back into the Fraser Valley. And I was sitting at the window of the airplane. And it's just an interesting vantage point looking down, isn't it? Right? You look down and you see all the the roads and the cars and the houses and the apartments and the mobile homes and whatever, and everything looks so small. But as I was looking down thinking how small everything looked, it was as if God spoke to my heart and he said, it might seem small, but you know it's not, right? In fact, if you walked up to one of those houses right now, you would realize that it's literally life size. And there's life stories being played out in every house, in every apartment, in every mobile home. Life stories that really matter. And the truth is in some of those houses, the stories that are being played out are awesome. Love and hope and success and unity and joy. But in some of those houses, the stories that are playing out, they're not like that at all. They're stories of dysfunction and darkness, abuse and addiction and neglect. And the truth is, your house is probably a little bit like my house. Like somewhere in the middle, right? Some highs, some lows. Some good, some bad. Some joy, some mourning. Some wins, some losses. But I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever wondered why? Have you ever wondered why life isn't easy? Have you ever wondered why that every house that you look down on from that airplane doesn't have a story of great success and great hope and great love and great joy? Have you ever wondered why? Can I tell you real simply the reason? The reason is because there's a story playing out behind every one of those stories. A spiritual battle that is raging in our valley. Jesus kind of summarized it in John chapter 10. Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and have it to the full. But the enemy comes to steal and kill and destroy. So the truth is, there's a spiritual story behind every story in every house, in every city in the world, including our beautiful city. And Jesus comes to bring life. And our spiritual enemy, Satan, comes to bring death. Jesus comes to bring hope, and our enemy comes to bring despair. Jesus comes to build up, and Satan comes to bring destruction. There's a battle raging in every home. And the truth is, it just kind of seems natural. We can't see it. It's like the story behind the story, but it just plays out. You say, well, why does Satan even have a role to play in our world? Didn't Jesus defeat him through his death and resurrection? He did. His defeat is certain, but it's not yet final. So Peter said that the devil prowls around our world like a roaring lion, looking to destroy, looking to devour. You've seen it. It's families where across the generation there's a cycle of sorrow that just rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls, right? Hurting people that hurt people, broken people that break people, shattered people that shatter people over and over and over again. And what's amazing is that it almost just seems natural to us. What's heartbreaking is that for many of you in here today, that's your story. Hurting people hurt people, broken people break people, shattered people shatter people. It's a little bit of my story. I told you earlier that Jesus stepped into human history on a rescue mission, right? I would suggest to you to make that even more specific to this battle that's raging is Jesus came to intervene. He's an interventionist. And here's how he does it. He finds somebody naked and half dead on the side of this broken road called life, and he saves them. And he heals their hurts. He takes the shattered pieces and he begins to put them back together again. And he takes their weakness and he gives them the strength to stand up in the generations of their family and say, enough. Like I remember when I was 12 years old and our family made a trip from Red Deer to my nanny and grandpa's place in Yarrow. And my little sister and I were in the guest bedroom one morning, and my dad walked in, and he said, Jesus saved me last night, and things are going to change in our house. And they did. See, Jesus is an interventionist, because it's true that hurting people hurt people, but you know what else is true? That healed people heal people, and changed people change people, and loved people love people, and saved people save people. So I want to dream a dream of spectacular faithfulness. I want to dream a dream of a bunch of ordinary world changers who stay at their post alertly, unswervingly, today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. See, I believe that our church is going to be a homestand, that we're going to be an instrument of intervention, that Jesus is going to use us to put a stop to the cycles of sorrows that are rolling through too many stories in our city. I just want to dream a dream, of spectacular faithfulness, of history changing one life, one story at a time. I want to look ahead. Like, what if a group of ordinary world changers stayed at their post alertly, unswervingly, not just today and tomorrow, but for generations to come? I'm wondering, can you see it? Because I can. I think we've seen a glimpse, right? Because the tide is turning one life, one story at a time. And victory is being won one life, one story at a time. Hope is rising one life, one story at a time. And I'm convinced that eternity is being changed one life, one story at a time. I want to dream a dream of spectacular faithfulness. Let's dream it together. Why don't you stand up as we close? I just want to remind you of something that you probably already know. God can do anything, far more than you could imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does it not by pushing us around, but by working within us, his Spirit deeply and gently within us. Jesus, change us, and you've changed us to change this city.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love to see you at any of our 3 Sunday services held at Sardis Secondary School on Stevenson Road in Chilliwack, British Columbia. For more information, please visit southsidelife.com.